Welcome to the Artist Emancipation Podcast. This is the first episode of season 2, and I'm starting it off very routinely perfect for me because we have Gabby Rosie back on the podcast. I wish I had like an audience to clap behind us. And
It's
this is so
wow!
this is so significant because last year when I started this podcast and it was a world-changing thing for me, Gabby was also the first guest I had on the podcast. So it's perfect. I didn't even plan it that way. And here we are, just the perfect little angels that we're always. Gabby, how are you? Of course, people are going to listen to this when it's not January of 2025 because we're iconic and we last forever. But the new year has just begun. What are you focusing on for the new year? I mean, tell everybody about you too, but like that's what I want to know.
We'll just dive in, we'll just get yapping as we do. Oh my God, like I love a new year. I love a new year. I love a birthday. I love anything that's just like what we can use as just an opportunity to be like, I'm starting fresh. I'm getting a new notebook. I'm getting my shit together. Like I literally live for it. So living for this new year as always. And yeah, I'm excited to make this I think I say this every year, but I think that's the way it should be. I'm excited to make this my most creative year ever. Like, I love sitting down and, I've written a big list of all the projects that I'm working on, the projects that I want to be working on throughout this year. And there's nothing like more energizing than looking at that and be like, shit, these are all the things I can create. And
Hell yeah.
absolutely gagging for the opportunity to devote myself to making that shit real this year, you know?
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. And one thing that I wanted to talk to you about specifically today is maybe it was like a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, but I saw you post and I thought this was so vulnerable and so just perfect because you posted something about 2024 was my flop year, or like it didn't turn out the way that I thought it was going to. And coming from you, when I look at you, I'm like, everything you do is perfection. So I was so intrigued as to like why you felt that way. So do you want to like elaborate a little bit on that and kind of how you want to shift gears in 2025?
Totally. Yeah, I feel like first of all, like a lot of the mirrors, illusions, filters, whatever we want to call it, that I think a lot of the time subconsciously we feel like we've had to uphold on the internet are just like it's exhausting. Like I think about this so much in terms of how we present ourselves and how we share ourselves. It takes so much energy to try and be anything that's not you. And it's so much energy to try and create in a way that you're like, oh, I think this is going to be successful. So I will mold myself into this perceived thing. Too much energy, too much effort.
Yeah.
And even though in the past I've always been like, I'm my fullest, truest self online, I think, I don't know, maybe it's about maturing, maybe it's about growing up, maybe it's about the internet and our relationship with the internet also maturing and growing up. But a lot of those, I guess, like subconscious desires or pulls to put up this sparkly illusion are just eroding at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like 2024 did not feel exquisite to me for a myriad of reasons, but that's entirely okay. And I think in business, especially, there is this kind of, we can have that internal and external expectation that we're always on the up and up. Every quarter, every year has to succeed the one that came before it. Otherwise, like, shit's on fire, catastrophe has struck. Um, and that's just not the case. That's not how life works. Like, it's not, we've seen the thing, right, where we think our progress goes in this perfectly neat thing, but reality is like this spiraling, chaotic thing that we're like, wait, this is life? This is what we have to do?
What did I sign up for?
Didn't know that was the thing. But that is the thing. And yeah, I think for me, it's more helpful to just be, it's more interesting as well. Like I've been playing around. I literally, I was recording this, I posted a new yesterday, and a lot of mediums and a lot of ways that I've wanted to create like more personal writing, more vlogging. I'm noticing that the reasons I've held myself back from them is because there's a certain level of honesty and openness that feels really vulnerable. And I'm so excited to explore that and expand what feels exciting in terms of vulnerability. And the truth is, like, the way to, if anyone's listening to this and they feel like they're coming out their own little flock year where things just didn't necessarily go to plan or you wish they went differently, I really believe that the best way to then change things isn't to sweep that shit under the rug and like pretend that it was all excellent, but actually to confront it and be like, okay, what the fuck didn't work? Why didn't it work? What am I capable of taking into my responsibility and what can I do now differently?
Yeah.
And that is like an empowering, helpful place to approach things rather than being like, it's all rainbows over here. Because that's
Yeah.
not always going to be the case, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's funny that you're bringing up like vulnerability and then going back to like what you want to create, because something in 2024 that I experienced for the first time was with like when one area of my life was doing really great and then the other area was not doing so great. So for me, 2024 was like
That
personal relationships.
seesaw pendulum.
Right. Whereas
Yeah.
before, like, I really didn't give a fuck about anything besides making money. So, like, for me to experience this, I felt like I had to. It was like,
Mm,
okay, like, what do you focus on in life when business isn't everything? And business is like the showing up, the being the person that, like, you don't necessarily want to be every day. Like, I love my business and I love what I do, but, like, being on the internet 24/7 and putting on a marketable face is not who I want
mm-hmm.
to be all the time, right? And it sounds like you kind of are in agreement with that. And it's like,
100%.
so when that isn't working out, what happens to the rest of my life? And I noticed that the personal relationships, vulnerability, the things that happened outside of my business, fucking phenomenal, right? I like grew that so much, but it was like this weird imbalance of like, okay, well, how do I have both? How do I have that extraordinary like personal life, but also have an extraordinary business that I can show up as who I want to be? So I feel like 2025 is the merging of those two things for me.
Yeah. And as much as I can try and like compartmentalize my life and identity thing, like everything bleeds into each other. So for me, it's like I have had a lot of chaos and change going on in my personal life. And as much as I want to be like, well, now I'm clocking into work, and by clocking in, I mean like sitting down at the pottery wheel or like making something on my iPod. But
Right.
like clocking into work is like that stuff that whatever's happening in your life, whatever happening, is going to impact how you create, how you can show up in your business. But the thing that excites me about being a creative is that's also kind of the point. Not necessarily the point, but like that's the juice that we use. Like
Yes.
our feelings, our emotions, that's the juice of how we create. We're able to channel that. And we see that in the artists we love so much. Like when someone drops a banger album, it's because they've lived something. They've gone through something. And that isn't to be like, okay, create fucking chaos in your life because you're going to make sick art from it. But I'm also not saying that, you know.
And I love our response. We're both like, well, what kind of shit can we cause?
I like to think of it more like we're not setting our fucking lives on fire, but like I want to live an exciting life.
Yeah.
And to live an exciting life, that means taking risks. That means doing things that a lot of people probably don't understand and won't be like, you're going to make that decision? And I'm like, well, I feel it in my bones. So, yes.
It's a good story, but it's also like that risk and reward thing. Like, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, like, how can you expect to have the success with a creation? If, because that shit's not going to happen if you don't try it.
100%. It's about developing your perspective and your opinions. That comes from lived experience. Like, I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about this in the past before around, confidence and specifically like creative confidence. The way you can make it so easy for you to press record or have a conversation or whatever it is, like write something, create something, and press publish on that thing is having something to say in the first place, having something within you that you're like, I've learned this lesson, or I've experienced this, or I'm desiring this in the world. So I'm compelled so much to do something about it. That doesn't come from, things just steadily going along the same way as they always has. It comes from changes and experiences and living the fucking life, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and the one thing that it's funny that we're like going through this because I know our first fucking piece of advice to people is always like, yeah, you're an artist, so you're consistently evolving. Like you're never going to be the same person. So we're like, why the fuck are we? Can't we figure this out? Oh, it's like, because you're evolving, you little fuck.
We would be so bored. This is what I tell myself, and this is why I'm like, I don't feel any, or like I'm working through feeling any shame around being like, okay, 2024 was a flop, things aren't going to plan, because that's it. Like, it's proof that I'm always trying and always opening myself up for growth, for evolution. And if I'm not taking any fucking risks, then I'm staying stagnant. Then I'm like leaving myself and my hopes and dreams behind. Whereas if I'm like, okay, I've got a few scars to show from this, we're collecting a few battle wounds, but we're growing in the process. We're becoming a fucking hotter and cooler version of ourselves because of all the things we're choosing to put ourselves on the line for.
Yeah. Oh, I fucking love it. And scars are hot.
They so are.
Come on. Okay, so my next question for you based off of this is what kind of risks are you putting yourself out there in 2025 for?
I love this question. What kind of risks? The first thing that's coming up is the risk to be seen and it not working straight away.
Hmm.
And I think so. I'm just thinking a lot about the content and the art that I'm making now, which I think about fucking constantly. But really letting myself go into new mediums and new corners of the internet where I don't necessarily like have a big platform yet.
Right.
And it's like that, it sounds silly, but like that vulnerability of not having the stats that are on show there be where you want them to be. And I think this is something that holds so many people back, like this fear of not wanting to be seen trying and
Yeah.
not wanting to be seen doing something different. And I'm sure you've seen it, but there's been so much conversation online, especially over the last few months, 6 months or so, around pivoting and like feeling like I need to pivot, I need to change my entire business, and this like almost concept that you have to burn everything that's existing down and then start from scratch, but also start from scratch in the most established, polished way where you have the perfect brand and you have the perfect elements and you have the structure of it all figured out to begin with. That's just not how creativity works and how making cool shit works. You make cool shit and you figure out what it is you really want to make by being like, I'm going to let myself begin and be seen in the process of figuring it out
Hmm.
and stumbling and trying things that flop and trying things that don't head off, like go start with a rocket fuel thing, but I enjoy the process of creating them. So I'm willing to stay committed to the journey of it. And a lot of risk that actually comes from, like, a lot of risk in creativity isn't necessarily like, I'm gonna, parade down the streets of my city naked with like my website across my chest or something like that. All of that would be
Please do
iconic.
it though. Like if you,
That would be great. But it's not always about that. What the risk usually is I am putting a lot of work into this thing and I don't know if that work is going to pay off. That is the most honest, true, creative risk everybody can take. Like that feeling of like devoting yourself to something and like cracking on with a project and you have no idea if
mhm.
and when it's ever going to pay off, but you first of all, like hopefully enjoy the process. You're letting yourself create things you want. But we do have goals. We do have like these external expectations of things that we want from something. But there's ultimately nothing we can really do to guarantee that we're going to have that external success. And that is the risk that I think we need to eradicate in ourselves, in other people.
It's so true though. Like that, I'm still like getting hit in the heart with that one, like because it's almost like there's so much emphasis like put on the struggle and put on the, especially for artists, like if we don't struggle for it, it's not worth it, blah blah blah. But it's like you actually have to put in the work to get past that struggle, you know? And like who knows at what point it's going to pay off. I just watched like a TikTok the other day. It was like some guy shared his work for 10 years online and then he posted one TikTok and he blew up overnight. It's like we can't plan for those things, but like the fact that he was consistently showing up for 10 years led up to that success. So it's like, no, it didn't just happen overnight. It happened through all those moments of struggle, of strife, of I don't know if this is going to fucking work, like you said, but I'm going to show up anyway because I believe in my artwork. And I think a lot of people can't say that, you know? Like, can you fucking stand up for your artwork?
Yes, it's a myth of the overnight success. And I think what the missing piece of it is, and what, like, because I absolutely don't want to promote this idea of like, you have to struggle and it's hard work and all of this, even though, like, there is going to be aspects of that 100%. Because, like, dude, do you know how big our like goals and aspirations are? Like, do you know how wild it is to be like, I want to make my art and I want that to pay me and I want to do whatever I want throughout my day? Like, that is a wildly different reality to the majority of people on this planet. And I think if we just acknowledge that, then we're like, oh, okay, I'm asking for a tall order, but that tall order is also completely possible. So there's that. But then the same side of that is, babe, we're making art. We're letting ourselves create the things that we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we move into this space where, yeah, we're taking a risk, and yeah, we're going to have these ups and downs of how we feel through the process. But ultimately, I want to enjoy my life while I am living my life. And a huge part of that for me is letting myself be obsessed with the things I'm obsessed with, like indulge in the things that I want to learn more about, be able to give myself avenues to express myself and embody the things that I can't stop thinking about. In that, in the day to day of that, day to day of sitting down to write or sitting down to make music or sitting down to paint, however you want to create, the satisfaction's already there. Like, you're already a fucking winner because you're letting yourself be yourself. You're letting yourself explore yourself. And that gives you the platform to be able to commit to it long enough to get to that point where the overnight success becomes an inevitability. Because you're not going to fucking quit anyway. You're like, I'm doing this thing because this is who I am.
Right, right. Yes, I fucking love it. And like one of the things I talk about in, you know, because you were a guest in there, is the artist roundtable. So like the first thing I have, like some of the people do, is declare like what is their artist identity. So it's that feeling of why am I creating? And a lot of people I feel like just post on the internet to, like, you'll see this a lot with like fine artists, I believe, like they just post paintings, which is fucking phenomenal. But it's like if you don't have a backstory, if you don't have the why, if you don't have the purpose readily available for people to digest along with your artwork, most of the time the chance for a sale or the chance for a connection to be made is going to be missed. So it's like if you can figure that out before you start this whole process of trying new things and doing, why are you doing it? And that's the thing that's going to connect with people, especially on social media. And I do believe, which I'm going to ask you about here in a second, that social media is about to change a lot, especially this next year in fourth. Like the astrology fucking says it too. Like it's all. I just think it's time for like a blow up. Like it's
100.
right.
All
like,
signs are pointing to it. We're
yeah,
ready.
yeah, definitely ready. So, like you said, you were kind of finding new avenues, new places where you don't have a big audience. Like, I actually think that's a really powerful thing to do right now because I actually, does Australia, are they going to get rid of TikTok? I don't think so, right?
No, we're going to keep it. We've decided we're going to keep it.
Well, it's staying. But, like, I mean, like in America here, like, TikTok is going away in like 4 days. Like, one of the
I
biggest.
just saw this morning there's been I mean, I don't know when you're going to air this, but I think there's been an extension for 270 days for you guys. So
Okay.
I think you're going to keep TikTok because everyone started going to that Chinese communist Red Note app, which is hilarious and iconic, and I live for it.
I straight
Which,
up
like,
downloaded it.
okay, right? Something that the way that I've been thinking about this is as an internet renaissance. And
Mm,
I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I want to know what you think. We are at a point where, again, like what we was just talking about earlier, like the illusions of what social media is are breaking down. And a lot of the illusions, the concept of social media is human beings all around the world being able to use these tools to share themselves.
right.
But the illusions that are like caked in and laid over that are, of course, algorithms and big business and all of these different operations. And, we can get down the propaganda tangent on another podcast. But like, there's all of these external things that have morphed the experience of social media, honestly, a lot into something that I don't even know if most people have even been enjoying, but we are absolutely addicted to it because, again, huge companies making these things for the purpose for them to be addictive, right? But at the core of it, I'm always still going to be an internet hype girl, and we can see it. Like, we can still feel, we can still remember, we still have nostalgia for the Tumblr era, the blogging era, the way that we grew up using internet as just a pure tool for expression. We
Yeah.
wasn't worried about like how many views did I get on my blog. I was like, I need you guys to see the dress that I made out of Sesame Street bed sheets, and that's it. Like, that's my goal for the day, and nothing else matters. And we have the memory of that, so we have such strong nostalgia to it, and we're like scrolling, yearning for that experience again. But it's been just like forced into this really aggressive, mostly boring thing that we're not getting what we want from it anymore.
Right.
And I think what I've seen a lot, especially in the past week, as this like TikTok ban is really, on the countdown in America, is so many people like stepping back and rethinking, like, okay, where do I want to go? Where don't I want to go? Instagram feels like the most obvious example of this, like, internet overlords controlling us and making us perform in this boring fucking way. So this is why people have gone to Red Note. This is why more people are like, okay, do I want to just scroll endlessly, or do I want to watch a long video of someone going into something? And do I want to get to know someone? Do I want to read what someone's wrote for literally thousands of words and get to know them and get to explore these concepts? And so it's emerging, and I really hope people lean into this, but it's emerging, this internet renaissance where we're like, okay, we're the ones who are adding, we're the ones creating the content, we're the ones contributing to these platforms. And if we want a change, nobody else, the businesses aren't going to change it. No one else is going to change it but us. Like, we need to lead the renaissance. And I've been looking at, the Renaissance era in art, and how that was a bunch of creatives who were dissatisfied with the Industrial Revolution and dissatisfied at this real like copy and paste kind of thing that was emerging in society. And it was like, no, 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 no. We want the art. We want to explore our feelings. We want to express ourselves. And it's like we're remembering that again, but now we have the tool of the internet
Right.
to get on board and to use in the way that we want. But we have to do it ultimately.
Right. Right. God, isn't it funny how history just repeats itself? Like, it just
Yeah,
blows.
because there's patterns. There's always patterns. There's revolutions, and then there's new ways to revolt against them.
Right. And like the big conversation that's been happening in my brain too, alongside of all of this, is people are fearful. I'm sure it's just as they were back then, that artists are going to be thrown away, that they're not going to be seen as important anymore. That they're whatever you can do, AI can do better, right? Like it's just a different set of tools from the previous time that we're up against, and it's like, as you look at these systems, these algorithms, the things that kind of built these illusions, and then the people that are also creating illusions of themselves, the one thing that stands out is like intention. If you go
100%.
on to any app, if you go on to any website looking just to entertain yourself and to be consumed by the content and not really give a shit, that's what you're going to get. Now, if you go online to create, to connect, to build these relationships with people, the intention is different there. And I do think that's going to be the key thing that separates, because the apps are always going to be there and there's always going to be a business incentive behind them. Like, no matter what we do, the artist can change it all we want, but it has to be our intention to do so. If we want to consume different content, it's got to be our intention to do so. Like you said, we are the leaders in this revolution. Like, we would have to step up and be very intentional about what we're consuming. You know what I mean? And I think artists are there. I think we're ready for a change. I'm not 100% sure that like the rest of the world is ready for that change, because it is such a addictive thing that we're stuck in. We're stuck in this entertainment business. Like, we want to be taken out of our own lives to get away from it, right? Like, a lot of us are in that boat, but it's like, how do we stop the mass majority of people from consuming shit content, you know, because that's basically what it is. And it's just like that intention of the artist has to be prevalent in everything that we do. So showing up on these platforms that, yeah, maybe they don't have the following that we have on Instagram. Even though Instagram, like, people ain't seeing my shit anyway, so I don't give a fuck. But like,
It's just a number on a screen at this point.
exactly. When we show up as creatives on these platforms, like the playfulness, the connectivity, the things that are human makeup, that's what makes us fucking human, right? Like the emotion, the intensity, like that's what we have to be putting into these apps in order to get it back.
Yeah. Do you know what it is? This idea that it's like, okay, what about the masses? Like, what's everybody do? How do we get everyone to understand this? Like, how do we fucking shake
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruh, that is literally artist's job.
Mm.
And that has always been the job of creatives. But this is why it's so hot to look through history and see these patterns, because it's always been. It doesn't have to be, it's not going to be the majority. It's going to be a minority. It's going to be a group of creatives. It's going to be a group of people. And then it doesn't have to be like an actual collective group of people. It's going to be like these dottings of humans all around the world, right? Who are like, I see the way things are going and I see through the bullshit. This is, I think, what artists do, right? Artists see the world differently. They have a different perspective. And because of that, we see the bullshit and we're like, things don't have to be like this. So I'm going to create art. I'm going to communicate through my music, my paintings, my social media, whatever it is that you create. That is your tool to communicate in a way that persuades people to be like, what is this? This is sexy. This is more appealing than this easily consumable shit. And it makes people want to convert. And we see this across so much stuff. It's like, it's so easy to eat shitty food. It's cheaper, it's mass available, it's you can get it in a millisecond. But if you see a chef and they're preparing something with like intention, with purpose, with love, you're like, the soggy hamburger can like wait, because what is this you're cooking up? Like, that makes people desire it because it's beautiful. Like, ultimately, as much as, you know, as humans, we can be drawn towards the illusion of ease and, you know, fast food kind of thing. We crave beauty. We crave like actual satisfaction to the core of us. And we're
Yes.
going to be willing to put more effort in for that stuff. I think about this a lot with, you know, it applies to so many things. It applies to fast fashion. It's so much easier to go and order a bunch of shit online or go to the shops and order like something that you're like, okay, I'm going to wear this once, I'm going to wash it, and then it's going to be like a string of plastic fibers. But that's fine because like it's really cheap and I can get it right now. Like, that's only going to satisfy us so much. But then when we see someone who's handmade something, when we go to a market, when we go to a vintage shop and we see something and we're like, this has nothing to do with what whoever's telling me is a trend right now, but for whatever reason, I need this like patchwear pair of dungarees or whatever it is.
You're like
We
not
were just,
speaking from experience.
who knows if I have a pair of patchwork dungarees in my wardrobe. It's anyone's guess. For whatever reason, like it sparks like a core of us, and we're like, I'm willing to pay more for this thing from an independent designer, or I'm willing to go out of my way to find something that really feeds me. That applies to social media, that applies to content, that applies to whatever we create. So yeah, it's easier to just scroll through whatever is at like the top of feed of Instagram right now. But when you start to get a taste and when you start to intentionally shift your habits to be like, actually, how do I feel when I've just scrolled through fucking whatever? Probably bored, probably like melting into the sofa, probably not energized.
Right.
And it comes to a point where we're like, but when I read that book, and maybe I had to fight with my attention span for a little bit to really get in with it, or when I watched that documentary, or when I just went for a walk and let myself look at the world around me,
Right.
we start to realize and like really take account of like how we're feeling, how those things influence us, and it shapes us to make different decisions. And I think a lot of what's been going on social media lately has sparked a lot of people to start making different decisions, and that creates a ripple effect.
Yep.
Do you feel like your social media habits have changed?
Mine have shifted a lot. I will say I've been highly introspective about what I want to put on the internet, and I'm still not there yet.
Mm.
Like for me, when I get like this itch of change, I have to like kind of let it land in my body to know what I'm fully going to do, and it's like just about there and I can feel it coming out. But like it's also where the desire to get back on my podcast came from. It was like, where was I the happiest in creating content? And it was like connecting with other artists and getting their story and learning about these things, right? So that was kind of my thing. It's like, why am I not pursuing this more? And it was strictly because like the world of content is like post an image here, do a carousel here, like right, it's so fucking boring. And it's like we can't look at the world in terms of what's working for everybody else and what everybody else is doing and what seems successful. And I'll be the first to fucking preach this and yet still do it in my business because, you know, like you're disconnected from it. And then when you start to realize, it's like, where do I get that ooze of happiness that you're talking about? Like I'll never forget when I found you on just on Instagram. It's like that kindred soul was out there and you were unashamed of who you were and you were posting like exactly what you claimed to be, right? So it was like that authentic fucking version of my artist that I had inside. And this is what, like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, where I was like scared to show that. And it was like,
Mm.
here's this woman who's doing it and she's doing it fucking great, right? So it's like, it doesn't even have to be a piece of artwork. It can just, I'm not saying that you're not a piece of, because you are, but like it can be somebody just showing themselves for what they are, right? And like that to me is a beautiful expression, and like that's something that I want to embody in my journey, and like that's what gets me excited. So of course I've had to kind of come back to my roots a little bit, and it's like, okay, if Instagram, if TikTok, if all these outlets get taken down, like where can I show up? And it's like I got to start creating my own shit again, right? Like my own
Mm.
podcast, my social channels, like they've got to be what I want them to be in order to be proud and to show them off. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I've also like it's interesting too that you say that you've kind of like been navigating these platforms that where you don't have a huge audience, because I've also felt very called to kind of do the same. It's like I want to be able to show up on platforms 100% myself and what gets me excited. So like, yeah, I'm not going to burn everything down. Like my Instagram, my design stuff, but that's all still a part of me. It's still going to be there. But like, there's this new era of myself that I kind of want to explore too. And it is more about just fine artistry and talking to other artists. So like, it's a different route and it's landing and it's going to come out at some point. So we'll see. But like, that's where I'm at.
Yes, like it's the permission to let yourself express. And I absolutely agree. Like, you don't have to bend shit down. You don't have to make this elaborate new plan and be like, things were like this before, they're not like this again. Let's start, and this is the new posting schedule. Anytime, like, I think this is so much of what gets people truly, truly bent out when it comes to social media. Whereas instead, it's like if we approach all of these different apps that are always going to be changing and always going to be fluctuating, what the internet is always going to be changing. Like how creatives can share their work has changed forever pre-internet. Like it's always going to be this ever-evolving landscape, and that is what's actually really exciting about it. And we don't have to prescribe ourselves to a posting schedule, especially the more that we're like truly everybody is chronically online right now. I don't know that it matters if you didn't post your Instagram at 8 a.m. again today. You know, people are going to see it when you post it because we're on the internet. We're here anyway. We're going to see it. And so it's like, how can you actually give yourself permission to be like, I want to make a video today? That feels like the right way to share this idea, this feeling that I'm living with. I want to get on my podcast and I want to create a new season of episodes because that feels right now. What happens of what we've seen a lot is people prescribe themselves to these posting schedules. And like, I told myself I'm going to post one podcast a week and 3 reels a week, and on the list goes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, bro, you're giving yourself this template and telling yourself you have to make your expression fit into that. And you're wondering why you feel stifled,
Right.
why you feel exhausted, or
Right.
why you're like, what? The ideas aren't flowing. My enthusiasm's gone. It's like, because that's not how it works, honey. Like, these are tools, these are methods for you to share yourself. And when we understand how we use social media, which like, you know, it is that feeling, that's what we crave, of finding someone who sees the world like us, or sees the world in a way that we want to see it, or gives us a new perspective. Or I fucking love when I find someone and I'm like, hold the phone, who is this bitch? Let me click on all of your links, let me find out everything about you. And it's not because they have like these perfectly orchestrated funnels, or they have this like 10-step post thing that allows me to get to know them and figure out their brand in these free, easy ways.
Yeah.
It's because I've seen one thing, and it can oftentimes it's like something that doesn't even relate to their art. They're just like sharing their opinion on like a TV show that they've watched. I'm like, who is she? I need to know everything. And then we go down the rabbit hole and we get to know somebody and we get to find their work and we fall in love with people over the internet. And it's such a beautiful thing. And the more we allow ourselves to create and exist on the internet in a way that allows that experience to happen, in a way that is organic, and it doesn't have to be something that's orchestrated. Like when we meet people in real life, if you're at a party and you see someone, you're like, she seems like my, you know, genre of person.
Yes.
We go over and we introduce ourselves and then we get to know them, and it doesn't have to be like no one's standing there with a fucking elevator pitch ready to go about who you are as an individual.
Right. Right. Right.
We
And I
can
feel
use the internet as people.
right, and I feel like that's kind of what the last like 5 years have been. It's like you've had to have that elevator pitch when you go out because you are your brand and blah 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 blah.
Right?
Like I get it, but like also I think this is where I think like the paid endorsement people are gonna die. Like, I don't want to say content creators, but you know what I mean, like the paid people who like endorse products and shit. Like I think that's all gonna die soon. To be honest with you, like because it's just so fake, and it's not like real people anymore. It's just we're watching advertisement after advertisement because it's not new. It's not something exciting to us like it was 5, 6 years ago, where we're like, oh
Yeah.
wow, this normal person is like paired up with this product. How did that happen, right? Like it's just boring now. So now we're
We
getting
see
to
through it.
right, we're
We
getting
see
back
through
to
the
the good
illusion.
stuff of where like it has to catch us off guard in order to get our attention because it's like we're so used to seeing the same old shit. So it's like, yeah, now we're back to that creative fucking like, yeah, we got to have balls to go introduce ourselves. We got to have balls to show up as like 100% ourselves online because that's what people want now. That's what we've
Yeah.
always did, but it was always fake to us. So it's like, all right, let's fucking
Absolutely. It's so bizarre to like when you take a step back and like see the trends of not just the internet but just like the world, and like how over time, we've had more and more access to people, and
Mm.
so like the illusions and like the PR and the branding, we see through the bullshit because it's like I can see that's not actually you, or I can see that's just a technique that you're using to sell some product that I don't actually need to me. And we're like, it worked for a while, but we don't want that anymore. And I think, that's why TikTok has surpassed so many of the apps now, because we don't want the shiny, you know, curated Instagram feeds where it's like a very clear brand palette, or like one clear, what's your one message that you want to share with the world. That's so dull. It's become so dull because it's regurgitated. And so when we've been banned too many times, we've bought athletic greens too many times to be like, wait, maybe this isn't
Why are these
actually
making
doing,
me shit myself? All right, like
like,
fucking hell.
maybe this isn't a magic supplement, maybe it's just really aggressive good marketing, which is fine, and that's how businesses are always going to function, and there's always going to be some level of influencer marketing because they're always hard. It just changes its scope, and it also changes how effective it is. We're
Yeah.
seeing, I think, like the effectiveness of this broad, glossy version of influencer marketing and celebrity really take a nosedive because we've lived it, we've seen it, we're seeing up close to it, and it's just like, I don't really care. Like, it feels flat, it doesn't feel human. Social media, like 10 years ago, brands were able to design this illusion of an individual, and this, we're seeing it now with like actual AI influencers,
Hmm.
which, like, bro,
This
makes
shit
my
creeps me
skin
out.
crawl
Yeah, it creeps
because
me.
we literally have so many humans already. We don't need to make like pretend ones. But like, we see this and we're like, I don't care about, the lipsticks or whatever this polished version of an idea of someone is selling me. I want to know about someone's thoughts and feelings and like the depths of their soul and what art came from that. And you were saying this earlier around like, we want to know who's making the art, like that gives value to the art. And I think that gives so much freedom to creatives as well, because what can hold us back a lot is this idea that we need to be the most technically skilled, and
Right.
we need to be like the best person to make something and put something out in whatever medium we choose, which, like, we want to be good enough to be able to articulate our ideas. We want to be good enough to be able to bring this thing in our brains into real life, and that's kind of the thing that progresses us forward as artists, to keep experimenting.
Right.
But ultimately it's like, yeah, but what's the story behind it? Like, why are you creating this thing? What do you believe? How do you feel? What are you expressing here? And that we have from the beginning. That gives us permission to be able to grow in public.
Yeah, yeah, and like I get a lot of that where it's like I'm not that good yet, and I'm like, what? Who's telling you you're not good yet? And like if you look at
And
the
what is
most
good?
exactly, if you look at the most famous artist, I wouldn't even like. I love the art, but it's the concept that drives it home. It's like, yeah, it's a fucking brushstroke. Like you can get as good as you want at that, but like sometimes the most weird shit. I don't know, weird shit. I don't know what to call. Fucking insane shit. Like I actually, this is really good. Like I watched a video and it was this girl. She was like, "Oh, you're an illustrator." She was an illustrator, and people were asking her about her art, and she's like, "Yeah, here's my sketchbook. Like this is all of my personal stuff." And like the person looks at it and they're like, "Oh, but don't you do like anything realistic? Don't you do anything like that's?" She's like, "Oh, here's my commissioned portraits," and they're like, "Oh my god, this is so good." So it's like majority of people, when you don't explain something, are going to be like, this is kind of weird, this is kind of dumb, I don't understand it, like you don't look like you're that good. But it's like, yeah, but I have the skill, I can whip that out anytime
Yes.
I want. But like, pay attention to the concept, and I think that's what drives it home. Like when you can create your own fucking skill, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this all the fucking time. It's anybody can fucking get really technical and learn how to pencil draw their dog.
Yeah.
Is it impressive? Yes. Is it cool to look at? Yes. But what if you did an expressionist painting of that dog showing its personality when it's outside playing with people? Like, that makes it 10 times more to me. Like, just the paint strokes, every just like, why did you do this, right? Like, clearly I can see that you have talent by pencil drawing a dog, but I want to see the creativity come from it. Like, I want to see you
Yes.
skill to do something with it. It drives me nuts.
This is where like art creativity is communication, and it's like the we what we want to express cannot be expressed oftentimes by simple words or simple day-to-day communication, or a photo that just takes an instant snapshot of just what is. Like, if you take an instant photo of your dog, I mean, I feel like every photo of every dog is the most precious piece of art ever, but we'll go down that another day. But like, what is there, what we're just seeing with your eyes isn't the whole story. And
Mm-hmm.
what we can do as creatives, or what we're compelled to do as creatives, is be like, but this is the way I see it. And
Yeah.
this is something that like is internal and external, and is like nuanced and so specific of like a way that you want to see the world, or the way that you do see the world, and you want to share that with other people because you're like, bro, I'm seeing something that I don't think other people are seeing it like this. So I
Mm-hmm.
need to figure out how I can communicate with them. And that's usually not learning the most, technical way to make it a copy of reality. It's making it a skew, an angle, a perspective of reality. Because then people can be like, whoa, you see things in these colors? Tell me
Mm-hmm.
more about that.
Right.
Like, tell me more about that perspective. We want to experience the art, the content, whatever you want to call it, that people create, and it gives us that miracle, like that perspective shift. We don't
Yeah.
just want like a photocopy of existence, because what's the point in that? But like, yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this because, like, if you would ask me prior to this conversation, it's like, well, what's the most successful art? And I would say it's the one that connects with people based off of, like, similarities, connects in general. But, like, it's also that disruption. Like, can
Yeah.
somebody disrupt your reality to make you see things in a new light? And I kind of love that.
Yeah, this is where it's like this internet revolution, this creative revolution, it's so fucking punk. It's being like, I see the rhythms that, we're expected to play by. I see how we think we're going to find success by following these templates. But actually, I'm going to swerve and go in this direction because that's what feels exciting. And I'm going to do things in this way. And I'm going to not even not be afraid, but be fucking excited to shift things up, be excited to disrupt. Because yeah, that gives us an outlet to disrupt our own lives, but also for other people, to give them that spark, to give them that shift that shows them what's possible as well. It's the thing of like, when we're like a teenager and we find like the type of music that we're like, what is this? They're speaking to like the core of my feelings. They're giving me examples of like how I can dress and how I can live and what I could be when I grow up. We
Yeah.
always want that feeling, and we're always looking for that feeling, and we can create it for ourselves and for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Dude, when I say that we are professional yappers, I truly mean it because we are 50 minutes in and I'm like, we got to end
We're
it.
just getting started.
Like, you'll be on many more times, I'm sure. But Gabby, I fucking love you. Thank you so much for being on this podcast today. Tell everybody where they can find you at, any projects that you have gearing up in the next month or so. But yeah, because I would love for people to experience you the way that I have.
Thank you, babe. I am Gabriella Rosie all over the internet.com, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever new platforms pop up. And I have my Substack Creatrix Universe and my membership, the Creatrix Coven, where we really devote ourselves to creating, making art, and making it something that we prioritize in our lives, because I think that's the hottest way to live.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Thank you so much, you hot
Thank
little.
you. I love speaking with you always.
I know. It's just, it fucking lights my little happy heart on fire. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.